There's a nice segue between this and our next presenter's topic, Imelda Poole, former president of Renate. Imelda is with us today, going to speak about the issue of migrant women, human trafficking, and homelessness. Sister Imelda is a Mary Ward Loretto sister from the UK, but living and working in Albania, where she heads up the Mary Ward Loretto Foundation. Imelda is a Renate trustee and has just finished her term of office as president, but remains as active as ever within the network, thankfully. It's wonderful that Imelda is here because she will draw upon her vast and varied experiences in working to combat human trafficking, and we present. Over to you, Imelda.
Sorry, excuse me, I was muted. Just to say that before I begin talking about this very painful topic, I'd like to honor and really name the organization Unanima, which is based in New York and works very closely with the UN. And as the Commission for the Status of Women is the host for us today, I thought it important to bring them to the forefront as Unanima, because it was they who exposed this horrendous situation of up to 1 in 6 people who are homeless being exposed to human trafficking. And I would encourage you to go to their website and to read their research and the many, many stories which they have brought to light about homelessness and human trafficking. So today in this presentation, I'd like to begin by just reading a couple of quotes relating to this topic. And one is from an organization again in America called the Covenant, which is caring for thousands of homeless children, and they work literally from the streets to care. And in their statement, they say children are usually alone, hungry, and scared. And that's just how traffickers want them to be. And again, from a UN statement, I'd like to quote, "Trafficking in persons is a vile crime that feeds on inequalities, instability, and conflict. Human traffickers profit from people's lack of hope and despair. And you know, women and children are the most vulnerable to such realities and suffering. And homelessness springs out of this inequality, instability, and conflict. In the research made by the Loyola University, they indicated from the research that 60% of homeless people are exposed to human trafficking. So in our PowerPoint and presentation now, I'm going to just focus on 4 aspects of this topic. And the first is natural disasters, where huge swathes, thousands of people in really dastardly earthquakes are redeemed homeless. And they are the ones that have the suffering from inequality in the care, and they are the ones that will be the most vulnerable as women and children in such dastardly natural disasters. And we're going to focus on Haiti. Secondly, we're going to look at the whole area of the migrant living on the street in London, Tirana, and looking at prevention work and the use of IT in rescue. Thirdly, we're going to look at the war, another incredible, disastrous, conflictual experience of millions of people in our world today, which redeems almost a third of the human race to be in mobility as we speak, and therefore many redeemed homeless, and how IT is so vital in awareness raising against human trafficking for these most vulnerable people during time of war to the machinations of the traffickers. And finally, we're going to look at youth homelessness, which is often hidden from sight when it's internal homelessness and not migrant led. And in these youth homelessness, we often find them couch surfing or ashamed to bring their belongings with them, and they are definitely hidden from sight. So we look firstly at this earthquake in Haiti. I'd just like to make a few statistics and data to bring the reality of an earthquake and the consequences to us in numbers. So the Richter scale was 7 in Haiti in 2010. 300,000 people were injured in that earthquake. 220,000 people died in that earthquake. Thousands of children were displaced and orphaned, and 1.5 million people were redeemed homeless and living in makeshift accommodation. The wondrous thing about this earthquake, in terms of the positive approach to combating human trafficking, was that as a very poor and not functioning well country, an organization from the States had encouraged with discretion the people of Haiti to go through DNA testing before this earthquake. So there was a database of DNA testing in that country. The earthquake happened and the traffickers zoomed in, and they picked up many of these displaced and orphaned children. And believe it or not, and we have evidence of this, the traffickers were allowed to go through the airport with up to 100 children, and they in fact sold these children in South America. Thanks to ProKids and the DNA testing, in fact, the majority of these children were traced to Colombia. And although they were not all repatriated towards safety with their family, the majority of them were. And so we can say that tech companies who today are working, we would say 300% more than at that time, are doing amazing work in prevention against human trafficking, as well as discovering the journeys of the traffickers and the machinations of them in cyber sex trafficking and online. So we have tech against trafficking now globally. We have the whole question of tech and money laundering and following the money. As we know, there's $150 billion is the fruit for the traffickers of the monies that they are gaining by selling and buying human beings. UNODCE is very much on the top of this, and they have developed an amazing joined up approach with tech and human trafficking. The present reality, OSCE and other organizations putting on webinars who have done the data are saying it's not good enough. And in fact, there is a lot more that could be done to bring the whole of the global world, the web on world, together to look deeper into the deep web, where the the crimes are taking place, transnational gangs are functioning. We now move to the migrant on the streets of London, on the streets of Tirana, Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people, and IT and rescue. I have a story in London near Euston Station of migrant Romanian girls who had been trafficked, had been through the NRM, had been assessed, had been in shelters, but had not got enough time to go through the prosecution process. So they were left pretty well abandoned, but still going through the courts. They fell through the gaps. And it's these young people that I sat with at Euston Station. I didn't see them all because they were scattered, apparently, but I had no phone. I couldn't use IT in my dialogue with these beautiful young people. But a young man came along the street and sat down on the road with me and said, "Can I help?" And this is the amazing kind of work that's going on, hidden by ordinary citizens who are aware and who are looking and seeing what's hidden from sight. And this lawyer had a phone, and together he was able to contact the service providers. And before we left, they were there gathering these girls together and ensuring they had beds and accommodation into the future and food. But it was a phone that did it. So we have to say that we cannot, although all the crime, practically nearly all the crime is going through cyberspace or through some kind of technology, and therefore it's horrendous. We also know that IT is imperative and invaluable for the work against human trafficking. I think I'll move on because time is moving on, but there are many, many stories like this on trains, in tubes, and in airplanes where there is rescue. And migrants sitting outside supermarkets begging are overseen by traffickers. And it's hotlines and hubs that are rescuing these very vulnerable people. We have the Ukraine war. This is just, I mean, it's impacting every human being in the world today. 5,914,000 people are now displaced by the Ukraine war. There are 8 million refugees, 17.6 million in need of humanitarian assistance in 2023. 100 million people are displaced globally through war and disaster as we speak. In the Ukraine war, it's Poland who's taking the brunt, you might say, of caring for the migrants in movement. They are housing and caring in their schools, like Sister Gabriela Hasiura that we heard from earlier. She's a head teacher of a school, and a quarter of her school are now Ukrainian children. This is the reality, and it's tough. And a lot of these Ukrainian refugees, after 6 months being housed in various countries around Europe, are being redeemed homeless because their hosts cannot cope any longer with the lack of space, if you like. So Renata has moved in through the help of Mishankara, and 15,000 times 2 has been donated to look at immediate care, medicines, food, housing, leafleting, safe journey, making sure that somebody knows if they get into a car, making sure that they take a picture of the car. All of these issues are put, all of these helps are put on the leafleting. We have the prevention hotlines on the leaflets, the numbers. It's all in Ukrainian and Russian. We're looking at care for the children who need empowerment and capacity building. And it's going on in all of the countries where the members of Renata are on the borders, ensuring that each person is treated as a human being and not like a commodity, as with trafficked people. IJM in Romania, whom we have a member, Sean, he and his colleagues in other countries as well as Romania are ensuring protection and legal support for many of these refugees who find themselves in trouble on the road, who've been labour trafficked or have been groomed online and are being put in danger of human trafficking. And we have Father Roman in Ukraine and Caritas Ukraine and our Mary Ward congregation, CJ, in Lviv, in Kyiv. And all of these people in our membership are making sure that cell phones are available, that food, that wood to make fires, to keep them warm, so that they're not vulnerable to the traffickers, is all there for them. Sorry. I think I've lost the picture, but that's okay. We'll just go back into the last section, which is on homelessness of youth and the hidden crime that is just incredible for our minors, often in care in Britain, certainly, and children who before they're 16 have been possibly groomed by people on the streets. They're children who feel lost and lonely, children who want a better life, and they're easily groomed into behavior that's impossible for them to handle, group sex in the pubs, in rooms in the background. And all of these children are being exposed to the traffickers on the streets, or indeed vulnerable to being on the streets because they're groomed by traffickers and then they're running away and they don't get back to their care situation. In Wales, the statutory system there has done a database of these children who are on the streets, and this has led to them developing a care situation that's more to do with adoption or foster care, and not in homes where the children are more in a mass situation where they don't get that personal, proper, ongoing advocacy and capacity building. We have hotlines in UK and networking where they're looking for open doors to those who are homeless and young and hidden out of sight. Crime Stoppers and hubs are available with hotlines and leafleting all around the UK to ensure that there is immediate rescue for children who are desperate. And we have situations like Sophie, who was, through her family, which was dysfunctional, which is often the case with domestic violence, was rescued through the medical scene, through the medical services. And we know that most trafficked and homeless have to go through the medical services. So I'm going to finish there, but offer you many ideas to perhaps develop in all of this area of homelessness and human trafficking. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Imelda. We appreciate that comprehensive overview, and will be cause for great discussion, I'm sure, further down the line. I'll introduce our next colleague, the last person to present before we take any comments or questions from the